I've had some questions about how to find a least common denominator if you have two polynomials that are different for the denominators. And so the way we're going to do that is we're going to start by factoring each of these denominators. So this trinomial needs to be factored, and then this binomial also needs to be factored. And so if we do that, we're going to get t minus 3 times t minus 3 for the first trinomial when we factor it. And then we have this difference of squares. We'll factor it into t plus 3 times t minus 3. Now, I'm going to mark these out since I've used them. That way we don't get confused about what's on the bottom. So when we find our least common denominator, we want to make sure that all of this denominator is listed down here. We also want to make sure that all of this denominator is listed down here. And so when we get ready to list the factors that make up our least common denominator, we're going to put that first denominator, which is t minus 3 times t minus 3. And then we're also going to make sure that second denominator is listed. But we've got to have the t plus 3, which we don't have down here yet. So we're going to put that. We also have to have a t minus 3, but we've already got t minus 3's. Now, one of the questions that comes up is, well, why would you put both of these and not put a third one for this t minus 3? That's a great question. We want to make sure that our least common denominator contains this whole denominator. If that whole denominator is listed, then we're good. But we got to have all those factors. But we also have to have all of these factors as well, because the least common denominator by definition is the simplest expression that is divisible by both denominators, or all the denominators. And so in this case, what we're looking for is we want this least common denominator to be able to be divided evenly by this denominator and also by this denominator. And so what that means is that all of those factors have to be listed down here. And so when I look at this expression, if I can find the first denominator of t minus 3 times t minus 3, which I have there, then that's good. I've got that denominator listed. I got all of its factors. I also need to be able to find, let's see if I can choose a different color here. I also need to be able to find the second denominator, which is all of that, t minus 3 times t plus 3. And as long as I can find both denominators in that least common denominator that I've come up with, then that tells me that I have the least common denominator. If you happen to put another t minus 3, you could still use that as a common denominator, but it's not the least common. And typically we want to have the least common denominator. So hopefully this will help you to understand what we're looking for when we say find that least common denominator. We're going to first start by factoring the trinomial to get to here. Same thing on the other denominator. And then we're going to make sure all of the first denominator is listed, and then all the second denominator is listed. If any factor from the second denominator is already listed, we don't have to list it again. If it's not, we need to make sure we put it. If you have any questions, you can feel free to let me know about that.